Welcome to Felony Miami, where we have real conversation with real people about the criminal justice system right here in America. Trauma, hate, distrust, fear, frustration, tears, disgust, abuse, resentment. These are some of the effects of doing time. After all, programming and conditioning convicted psyches for self-destruction is the soul-crushing business of life in the American prison system. Incarceration may supposedly be about rehabilitation, but more often than not, it's a process that results in committing more crime and serving more time. When kids are direct filed into adult facilities, many live the rest of their lives fighting post-traumatic stress demons behind concrete, steel, and razor wire. And for adults who get locked up, their arrest usually also means arrested emotional development. So, even if they get out at age 50, they're still locked in a mindset of a 20-year-old. For every Malcolm X, there are 10 million felons whose names you'll never know or never hear of, who will never be able to shake their past. Society breeds impropriety and careless citizens through the infected soul of today's American democracy. Where there is injustice for one, there is injustice for all. Welcome to Felony Miami. Let's air it out.
So welcome, Felony Miami, episode 22. I'm your guest host, Bernard Ashby, aka Dr. B. I'm here with three esteemed guests. I'll start with my guest on my right here, DJ Lyve. Lyve, just tell them a little bit about yourself.
I've been DJing pretty much my whole life. You might know me from being on the television show 106 in Park. I was the DJ on that show for 6 years.
The Basement. Oh, wrong show.
Wrong show, but
shit.
Same network. Mm-hmm. But now I did actually a segment which was similar to The Basement on 106 in Park called The Back Room. So, which had to do with freestyle and new artists coming on and such and stuff, like that too. So, very similar. A lot of people confuse that actually.
Like me.
So we're happy to have you here. Our next guest is Peter Schoenthal, attorney of law. Tell them a little bit about yourself, Peter.
Well, thanks for having me. My name is Peter Schoenthal. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in South Florida, born and raised, Fort Lauderdale, live in Miami now. In my free time, I also coach and mentor football players here in South Florida who are now all over the country playing football. And yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and also my partner in the FDF venture, so I'm happy to announce that. And our next guest, last but not least, Jamila Lynn. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. I have a company, Bottom Up Thinking. It's really a consulting company. I work primarily with historically black colleges and universities on student retention. Former professor at Morehouse College, all black, all male in Atlanta, Georgia. And so a lot of my research is around toxic masculinity, thinking about how to help young men stay out of prison. And ironically, I'm co-parenting with a man who's doing a very long sentence in jail right now. And so how to foster healthy communication is important for me and my 11-year-old daughter. And so I'm here to talk a little bit about my intellectual work, but also kind of my personal realities and the way they come together.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. So that's a nice transition into our topic. So our topic today is about the criminal justice system, more specifically prison and prison institutionalization, and also this impact on families. So you mentioned your own story, we'll remain sensitive to your personal life, but you are also an academic as well.
Yes.
And I want you to begin to kind of explain to us some of the dynamics that are involved in the institutionalization of mainly males, but women as well, in our prison system and what that means to society. It's kind of a broad question, but I want to know how you would frame the impact of that, just the institutionalization on society.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I've come to learn, not only through my research and work at Morehouse, but through this parenting experience, is that we really don't understand the institutionalization and its impact. And we tend to dismiss it because we don't understand it. And if we lead with the notion that everyone who is incarcerated is now a really bad person, and the mistake defines that person's worth, right, and the love that we should show that person, then the institutionalization then serves a larger agenda, right, which we know is very much, rooted in white supremacy. And so the attack on the black and brown families, we're no stranger to that. I mean, we understand how that has been at work for so many decades, right? But now when you think about institutionalization, it becomes kind of super intriguing to think about how many black institutions give up on men and women who are incarcerated and who really believe in the narrative that, to be locked away is to be emotionless, to be savage, to be incapable of loving, to be less than human. I mean, we see that in the recent evacuation plan for, people in North Carolina and South Carolina. They weren't going to let those inmates in South Carolina anywhere close to, a way out. Because, again, if we got to get rid of somebody, they're the disposable ones. And so I do think that it problematizes the way we think about family structures.
Yeah.
Because now it's, as a mother, how do I negotiate the social messaging, right, against my first inclination, which is to parent with the person who I fathered,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
powerful
just
stuff and things
yeah.
that something that we really don't talk about, right? It's a narrative that is kind of ignored.
Yeah.
So it brings me to DJ Lyve, and many people are probably wondering, why is a DJ on a show called Felony Miami?
Right.
Well, you have some personal experience given
Well,
your own situation, and can you elaborate on that?
Just opposite from you, I'm the child in the situation.
Right.
My father was locked in prison my whole life. And then when I was 23, he came home. My sister was 27. We were already grown at that time. But since 2003, my father's been incarcerated at least 10 more times. All parole violations. My father's a lifetime parole. In New York, I'm from New York. In New York State, they have life parole. My father's a life parole.
So wait.
He'll be in the system for the rest of his
explain
life.
that. So he's out on parole, but it's for life.
For life.
And to jump in, that's important to explain for people,
Yeah.
especially listening here in Florida, Miami, where we don't have parole.
Right.
Yes.
So that,
Well,
on
you
the
guys
state
give it to
level-
the probation, like you guys don't even have parole officers.
No, it's straight probation. So I think it's important for you to
And you
discuss
only
and
allow
explain
5
that.
years, right?
Exactly. No. People
they
on
extended
probation. Yeah, no.
So, okay.
Unfortunately.
Well, understand like what parole is just, how can you say this? You're still in the system. In their mind, they let you go home, but you're technically still serving out your time that you have. So they might let you out early in parole. In the case of New York, I've had a friend, he was facing 15 to life with possibility of parole after I think it was 9 years. Mm-hmm. First time he went to parole, he got denied. The second time, they let him out. But he still had 4 more years left on his term. Mm-hmm. So he still had parole for another 4 years. So when he came home, he had to check in every week to that parole officer.
So basically,
they came to the house whenever they want. Like it's not.
So basically, to clarify, and Peter, if you could back me up on this, so Florida does not have early release, right?
No.
Not
based on parole. You
Not
can
based on parole.
apply for early release, but
early
not
release,
based on
but
parole.
look, basically, so it's a different concept. We just don't have that. We have probation, and can you explain the difference between parole and probation for our listeners?
Well, probation is more of either you've been sentenced to it or you've agreed to it. Where parole,
So it's a different form of punishment.
The
No
punishment.
parole, you can't agree. That's what it is.
Yeah. But the punishment is similar, right? You're on probation. Probation officer showed up to your house. You got check-in. They're testing your urine. The standard's lower, like on parole. If you're deemed to have violated, it's not have you violated based on a reasonable doubt. That standard's much lower. So like what we see happen a lot of times on probation here is you'll get arrested on it. You're on probation. You get arrested, let's say on a a marijuana charge. The state will throw out that marijuana charge. That case is not over your head, but they're still going forward on the marijuana as it pertains to your probation.
You violate probation.
Right? It's hard to grasp, but what the system is basically saying, that case has no merit except for if you're on probation because the standard is lower. And it's a fight that we fight every day, and to me makes no sense, but our legislature thinks it is.
Yeah.
And so we have to play with the rules of the game.
Let's not go too far down that rabbit hole, but go ahead.
Now,
Finish.
let me just,
DJ Lyve, please finish
part
your
of
story.
my father's conditions of his parole, he cannot have any police contact. See how I said it? Exactly how I said it. No police contact. That means he can't get pulled over driving. That's police contact.
Wow.
His parole could come lock him back up now, and he'll have to do another bullet a year for that.
If he's in the car with a friend who's driving, they get pulled over. That causes issues.
He's in prison right now for that.
Wow. So there was a anecdote, a story you told me that really resonated with me.
In the state of Florida?
With your father, and talking about how he was institutionalized and some of the things that he had to deal with once he left prison and started to interact with you. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. So I don't know if a lot of you guys understand what institutionalization is. I'm going to break it down in layman's terms. If you're doing something for so long, you become used to doing it, and you become that. It's what it is. When you're incarcerated, when you're in prison, not jail, when you're in prison, that means you're there for 2 years or longer. After normally the 4th year, your psychology, your psyche starts getting blown.
Not to cut you off. In Florida, it's anything over 364 days, so it's a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's why people get stuck on Rikers for such a long time and stuff like that. You hear all those stories.
Yeah.
Because of the 2-year rule. We have the
Two-year
1 year
rule, yeah.
rule.
Well, it's technically 18 months in New York. It's
Okay.
18 months to 24 months, depending on what it is. But now what happens is your mental, think about it, you're in prison 4 years or more. Your mental is automatically different because your daily life is different. You get told what time to wake up, when to eat, when to go to bed. You can't do what you want to do. Then you also, at certain times, spend a lot of time by yourself, which automatically kills your brain. When they put them in lockup, I don't know what they call it here. What do they call solitary confinement here?
Solitary confinement.
They call it solitary. When you put somebody in solitary confinement, like imagine putting yourself in a room with no television, no sunlight, no nothing. You have to sit in that room for 23 hours a day. I think after a day, somebody will go crazy. Like, oh my gosh. Think about somebody that's put in there for months, on months. Then they come out to population, and then they go right back in.
Yeah.
All this is doing is damaging somebody's brain. It's like it's another way of enslaving somebody. That's what the slave owners did. All these different tactics. It's the same exact thing inside the prison. Then the guards that are there, I don't know about Florida.
Yeah. Well, there's some great experiments looking at that whole dynamic.
For the state of New York, all of our prisons are upstate New York.
Yeah.
Far from the city, far from anybody. So all of the guards, a lot of them are like,
They live upstate.
Yeah.
they're rednecks.
Yeah.
A lot of them are like, they're rednecks and they're highly racist. Highly racist.
But explain that, because I don't think a lot of listeners will understand. There's a big difference between living in New York City and living in upstate New York.
Upstate New York is the country.
Yeah.
People talk with accents like, how y'all doing? Just like how in the South. Upstate New York, they actually sound like that. Because it's the real country. Like, a town might only have 500 people in it. I went to high school. In my high school, there was 5,000 kids in my high school. And that was only 10th, 11th, and 12th. That wasn't including 9th. If we included 9th grade, we had 7,000 kids in my high school.
I thought I had a lot. I had 4,000.
Yeah. My high school graduation was 1,000 kids. 750 kids didn't graduate. That means that would have been 1,750 kids that graduated in my high school graduation.
That's sad.
So now you go upstate, your high school graduation class might be 40 people, 50 people, depending where you're at.
But dude, tell me the story.
I know you want to hear this.
Yeah, I want to hear the story.
So my father first originally came home. My grandma, my grandma's still alive. His mother. So this was he came home. This was the next day, second day of being home, technically. He only been home for one night. My grandma's, I'm there, all happy, like, oh, Pop's home. So my grandma's, she's cooking. She's like, I need some ingredients, whichever it may be. Can you get it from the store? So I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll go. I'm driving. So my father's like, I'm going to come with you. All right, yeah, cool. Come on, let's go. We'll follow. I never bonded a day with my father in my life. I never had a catch with my dad. Played football. None.
So
of
how
that.
old was he when he went in? How old were you when he went in? Actually,
Well, for the big bid, see, my father's been to prison multiple times. He's been in prison most of my life.
got it. So most of
But
your life
the
he was
big
incarcerated.
bid,
Yeah,
because my father did a 16-year bid. That's
Yeah.
when he came out in 2003. But he was in prison before that too.
got it.
But I was 7.
Got you.
I was 7.
So you were a child. You're an adult now. He's
7
out of prison.
to 23.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He comes home. We go to the store. Where I'm from, there's like bodegas, corner stores and stuff like that. Bodegas just owned by Spanish people. Like it's like a grocery store, but just super small, you know? So we go to the bodega. I'm like, all right, come on, Pop, whatever. We had to choose between like a product, but it was like between which one. Like I didn't know, like, do they want Heinz or they want this? I'm like, I don't know which one my grandmother wants. So I'm like, let me just call her. I got a cell phone. I'm like, I pick up the phone. I'm like, I'm gonna call my grandma. I was like, I'll call grandma and we'll just figure out because I don't know which one she wants. So he out of nowhere, he's like, no, I'm gonna call her. Like, I'll call her. I'm not gonna lie. I paused in my mind. I'm like, dude, you just came home from prison yesterday. How can you call her? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how can you call her? He pulls this phone out of his pocket. It's the cordless house phone. The cordless house phone. You know, the wireless house phone. He pulls it out and presses like the thing, and I start laughing. I'm like, what are you doing, Bob? What are you doing? The guy behind the counter is laughing too. My father gets upset at the guy behind the counter now. He just came home from prison. He has that prison mentality. I'm allowed to laugh at my dad.
Yeah.
But my dad's like a gangster type of dude. You can't laugh, so he almost wanted to kill the dude in the store for laughing at him. And I had to tell the dude, I'm like, the dude started just genuinely laughing, like, whoa, what's this guy doing?
Yeah.
It almost got ugly. But I talked to my dad, I'm like, Pop, hold on, Pop. That's not a cell phone. Yeah. That's a house phone. And he looked so confused. Like, he looked at me like, what? I was like, Dad, that phone cannot go 30 feet outside of the base. Like, there's a little base. He's like, but I saw your grandmother talking outside on the driveway with it. He was like, she was on the phone talking outside on the driveway. What do you mean?
Wow.
My father had never seen a cell phone physically before.
Crazy.
And he had actually, at that point, never seen a wireless house phone. Think about it. We stopped using cord in like 1990. Mm-hmm. So he saw it on television, but he actually physically never seen a wireless house phone or a cell phone in his hand physically.
So
He thought they were the same thing.
So I think that's a great anecdote to institutionalization, right? Yep. He was in prison for a long period of time, and our prisons are supposed to be a place of rehabilitation, right? And it's supposed to, obviously punish people for their crimes, but put them on a path to being reintegrated into society. And many people, right, objective people will disagree with whether or not that's actually true. And so I definitely want the academic and the attorney in the room to comment a little bit more on really what goes on in prisons and how that how prisons actually prevent people, for lack of a better word, from being reintegrated into society.
Yeah, no, it goes exactly to what you're talking about, and you kind of jumped the gun on me right there because I was going to talk about, the point of prison isn't just punishment, it's to rehabilitate, right? Mm-hmm. And we are failing so bad at the rehabilitation issue, and you've got to look at it from this, your father was in there 16 years. That's like almost like a lifetime. Yeah. So not only are you in somewhere for 16 years, you are living in a society for 16 years. Prison is a society.
Yes.
You have your way, you have your structure, you have your schedule, and oftentimes based on if you, depending on who you're hanging out with or if you have a job, you have a purpose.
Right.
And when we don't get you ready and there's no rehabilitation and we're not teaching you about cell phones and we're not teaching a trade and you're not ready, when you come out, you almost don't know what to do and it mentally messes with you. You have no purpose now in life. A lot of times your family ain't there anymore. You got no money in your pocket. You don't know anyone. You're by yourself. I mean, one of the best movie scenes that illustrates this is Shawshank Redemption when the old man gets out. He's been looking forward to this for 50 years. He gets out and he's like, I don't know any of this world. I don't have a place here. I don't fit in. He takes his own life. you at least know who you are and what you're supposed to do in prison. And if we're not teaching you what the next step is and what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to know when you get out, what's the point? We're setting people up for recidivism.
Yeah.
We're setting you up to go back. You don't need parole for that. You don't need probation.
Right.
And you self-sabotage. And, you know, not teaching and doing all that goes, you know, it's a funny movie, the movie Life. You talked about your dad with the phone. That reminds me when Martin Lawrence goes to the bus station and he's seeing all these people walk by with afros and he's like, where am I? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's real. And everyone in the world needs a purpose. You need to know your purpose. And if you go from having a purpose, even if it's in prison, to not, that messes with you. But society's going to tell you, like, you should be grateful. You're not behind bars anymore. And inside, you're struggling with that because you're saying, they're right. Why do I feel this way? And now you start making bad decisions.
And I think
now you
to-
start
to
seeing something
add
wrong with
to
you.
that, right. So when we think about material culture and we think about the phones, in some cases, you know, key access might be a little interesting for people. I mean, we've heard these stories. But to me, I'm so interested in the emotional intelligence piece.
Yeah.
Because not only do you not know how to navigate in a new world, new to you, you also don't know how to engage
At all.
people.
At all.
Yeah,
So,
because
you don't
in the
know how
prison,
Well, that
it's,
goes
yeah,
back to
you have
what
to
we talked
survive,
about.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
before we came in here, we were talking about that. Not only is it a different, you know, life, you have to adjust your mind frame when you're in prison.
Yeah, you have to
You got to
survive.
shut your emotions down a lot of the time. You got to survive, and you got to sometimes be someone you are not.
Right.
And if
at
you
the
do that
same
long enough,
time, though, you're
become that.
parenting. You're parenting with a person who expects that you will emote, that you will emotionally invest because you're not dead, but you're living and breathing in a space marked for your death.
Yeah.
So how do you ask a father to emote knowing that the space that he's in to do that could set him up to be killed?
Wow, that's
So
powerful.
I think it's a duality. It's an irony that that we don't always think through as mothers, because we're looking at this kind of disconnect, right? We know the physical disconnect. You're federal, you're moving all over the place. Yes. So he's been in D.C., he's been in South Carolina, he's been in Arizona, he's in Texas now. I mean, so I've kind of wrapped my brain around the migration and how that happens. That in and of itself is a huge learning curve. But
That's federal.
federal. How do you manage your expectations of a man who wants to be a father, is a good father? Your child remembers him as an incredible father. You know him as an incredible partner. How do you manage your expectation of the emotional investment when to make that puts him in a vulnerable place?
so
being,
you made
being emotionally available makes you weak, makes you a
Exactly.
target.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to be emotionally. And so imagine the predicament you're putting someone in who's on the inside.
and it's very hard for the family to understand that. And you
Yes.
bring up an important point, which is the impact of prison on families. And you mentioned the emotional aspect of it, right? And DJ Lyve, your father was in prison, in and out, for a long time.
My whole life.
How is your relationship with your father, in terms of like that emotional connection?
Nowadays, I'm the father. When my father came home from prison, he couldn't cope with it, started using drugs. Something he'd never done before. Started using crack, doing different things. I love my dad no matter what. Me, it's different. My father wasn't not trying to be there. He just couldn't be there. It's not like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If he had a choice to be there or not be there, no, he would have been there. But he was taken away. So I don't fault my father for being in prison, because whatever he was doing, he was trying to provide for his family.
So did he have an emotional connection with you, like a loving approach? Did he engage you and talk to you about intimate things that were personal to you?
No. How? He's in prison. My knowledge of my father is going to see him in prison,
But you
not of even being home at all. Like I told you, I never had a catch with my dad.
Go ahead, Peter.
But
Yeah.
you had mentioned something about when you're inside being emotionally stunted and emotional growth. And when you asked him now, what's your relationship like?
Yeah.
You're the father, because you're the one that has emotionally grown, and he's had to stunt that growth while he was in there, and it has affected his life on the outside because we did not do a good enough job rehabilitating him to be ready emotionally. When he came out of prison.
So now, since he's been in prison, right? Because they would do all types of stuff to make more money, do whatever. So now my father is legitimately registered bipolar. He wasn't bipolar before, but they gave him so much depression drugs, some of the other things. So now, my father thinks he's bipolar, and actually is bipolar now. My father has emotion swings like that. I mean, he could be like, 1 minute, and the next minute want to kill you, and really want to kill you, and do it. Like, that big of a swing.
And
Violent.
You also feel that in the communication, too. At least in my experience, you can tell when there's been some kind of incident in the prison. Because you can go from, I just got out of a class, we're reading this book, you can check this author out, like a kind of relatively high-level intellectual conversation where we're talking about politics, we're talking about the exciting candidate, right? We're having that. And then there's 2 weeks silence. Now I know there's lockdown. Now I know what that means. Like I've had to learn the schedule, so to speak, and the rhythm of how things are, because nothing is consistent.
Right.
The only thing that's consistent is the time, right? And we, if we choose, we mothers and children, we do that time too.
You do.
So, Professor Lynn, right? So, you're very unique in that you just happen to be an expert in this particular area, and you're dealing with it on such a personal, intimate level, right? How has that helped you understand or navigate your relationship with the father of your child, being that he's in prison? And you just articulated your relationship and understanding that he is, in a institution that things are going on and it affects your relationship. Do you think that gives you more insight than a normal person would have if they were in similar circumstances?
Well, it's one thing to intellectualize it.
Yeah.
I understand the theories.
Yeah.
I understand that my job with young men in college is to make sure they don't end up there. Like, I understand the purpose in that way, right? My professional commitment to changing the narratives for the lives of Black men, okay?
Yeah.
But the emotional piece of it makes it real in a different kind of way. And we were talking about that. So, he has been away for 4.5 years. He has 26-year sentence. So it's only now that I think I've been able to take the shame out of it for myself and my daughter, because being an academic means that there's a certain kind of respectability politic that you subscribe to, right?
Yes.
So you might buck the system all you want, but when you're chasing tenure, when you are publishing, when you're on the road at conferences, you're an extension of that institution. And depending on the culture of your institution, this world that we're talking about, lockdown, solitary, has really only become interesting to certain thinkers in recent years. Right? So let's, you know what I'm saying? Let's be quite honest about that. So I'm not always situated in a space where the freedom to tell that story and to make it personal is going to be recognized, or I'd be encouraged to do it. So it really took me actually moving to a space of consulting where I felt like I had an opportunity to, you talked about living your truth, right?
Yeah.
To really see the professional and the personal converge, because that's what it is. It's like intellectually I understand it, but it's real when that 2 weeks, hits, and you don't know if it's lockdown or if there's been an incident where your loved one has been involved. You don't know if he's been moved, because that has happened. You wait for a call, hey there, I try to do things like being intentional about when you can call as best as he can manage that. So, hey, we have a doctor's appointment with Zoe at, 11 o'clock on a Wednesday. And can you try to call and around that window, maybe at least we can put you on speakerphone so you can have some connection, right, with that. Again, feeling like my voice, my opinions, I can be a father, right? Like those things are real. So you try to schedule in a way where, he can be included as much as possible. But, having the two worlds converge now, you don't always know. There's a sense of anxiety. There's a constant anxiety, and I think you probably would agree with this.
Like, why haven't I heard from him for 3 weeks?
Right.
Probably got transferred.
Probably got transferred. So it's been a thing where we've had like video calls set up, and he doesn't show to the call.
Now, I have a question. If you don't
what
mind
does
me
that
jumping
mean?
Yeah, go ahead, jump in.
They have that nowadays.
So
They do
Peter,
have
go ahead.
video calls.
Do you struggle, or how do you deal with, because you're the academic and you'll feel these emotions and you know where these emotions are coming from, you know what's driving these emotions, but at the end of the day, they're your emotions. Do you struggle at times with, like, I understand where it's coming from, but I just can't help but get caught up in it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is, it's constantly making sense out of something that in many ways is not adding up, right? And when you are the primary caretaker, there's a sense of balance and stability that you're now responsible for in your home. And so how to recognize his circumstances, how to understand his inability to, for example, grieve, his inability to process his thoughts, how to understand those circumstances and give him some bandwidth to act out and have skin tough enough to take it.
Yeah.
It's a commitment that we make, and we continue to recommit, but there's a kind of toughness that you got to bring with it, because you will be tested.
And this is really a narrative that's not talked about when we talk about criminal justice or reform or some of the iniquities that exist. We never talk about the emotional components of it. So I'm glad that we're talking about it now. I wanted to transition a little bit to talk about the impact on children. And DJ Lyve, you are a child of someone who's incarcerated, correct? Right. And a question that comes to mind is, why aren't you locked up? Like, what's different about you than your dad, and how has that impacted you in your own life, basically?
Simple question for me. Because of my community, because of my family, because of my friends, and literally my community around me. See, me and my father have the same exact name. So when I was young, everybody calls me by my middle name. Because if you call me by my first name, and long story short, there was kids I used to play with when I was a kid. When they found out my real name, they would go back and say it to their parents, and then their parents wouldn't let them play with me no more.
Got you. So
because who my father was.
Okay. Not
because of who I was. I'm like one of the happiest dudes alive. I'm like, I'm nothing like him. I'm like, what?
For those of you who don't see him, he's got energy.
Great energy.
He's happy.
Hoping you
I'm
can
just
feel
saying,
it.
it's like, for me, even as a kid, I had to become very mature as a kid. I'm talking about like not a 13-year-old. I'm talking about like a 5, 6,
so
7,
you think that affected your innocence? Do you think you had to grow up
quickly? That's the reason why I didn't see in my whole entire life. I was blessed to realize what I want. I got showed what wasn't good. You see, not what I don't want. I say what I want.
So if you don't mind, can you talk about the dynamic between your mother and your father, and if there's anything that she did to protect you or mitigate the impact of him being in jail?
Real simple.
I've been in prison.
My father's African American. My mother's white.
Okay.
Right. I was raised in the 80s. At a time where that wasn't even cool. White women raising 2 black kids, not cool whatsoever. At all.
Yeah.
I'm telling you,
I
we
understand.
went through so much with that, right? But my mother was a very strong person. And my mother had to look at it like, well, what am I going to do? I have no choice but to take care of my kids or crumble. They would have took us. They would have took me and my sister.
Yeah.
So my mother always made sure that she put me around my grandfathers, my uncles. Even he's my brother, but he's really my older cousin. But I call him my brother because in my life, he's my brother with me every day. So she made sure that I was around the good people that could be in my life and not around the bad people. Because I have a whole side of my family that I barely even know, but they're bad.
Yeah.
And they're my first cousins.
So your mother made sure she tried to create an environment for you that allowed you to.
For me and my sister, so you know what? It's like,
flourish.
You're not going to be like this. I'm going to put you around people that are positive. Like all my grandfathers, super hardworking guys. One of my grandfathers in Pearl Harbor, like
wow,
very great men.
Yeah.
Everyone she put me around was like really great men, not good men, great men. So I was able to be around them and get my man stuff from them. You feel what I'm saying? And I could look at them like, man, they're all spitting examples, like, you know? So she really instilled that. And then when we were home, she was very strict. My mother was very, very strict. Not as strict as me, 'cause I'm a boy, but on my older sister, she was super strict on. My older sister was working a job since she was 12, 13.
Oh,
Like
wow.
12 years, 13, like, you know what I'm saying? So she was super duper strict in a good way, though.
So Professor Lynn, I mean, this is personal territory, and you could choose not to answer, but you're a mother, right? And you're the mother of a child whose father is serving time. You mentioned earlier that you sort of have to have a thick skin, so to speak. You have to be strong. But how is it being a mother to a child and trying to protect her from her father's situation? Is there anything in particular that you're doing to blunt the impact of that situation? You mentioned some of the emotional issues and the issues that he has to deal with that affect the communication with you, but I'm sure it impacts the communication with his daughter as well.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I affirm her father. I think the greatest thing we could do as parents is to affirm our partners. And by partner, I mean, you know, the person who we're co-parenting with. I hold him up in spite of his mistake. He made a horrible decision. And at the same time, I hold him accountable. So I affirm him and I hold him accountable in her eyes.
Yeah.
She's got to understand that there are consequences, right, to every act. I mean, she's got to get that this is such an incredible life kind of teaching moment for her. I'm really enjoying the conversations we're having now, because when she was younger, it was like dealing with the physical absence of her father. He's not coming to soccer. He's not coming to PTA meetings. He's not showing up.
So how old was she when he
6
went
years
away?
old.
And did she understand that? Was that explained to her? Was she kind of protected until she understood? Or was able to understand, I guess.
It took us about 6 months to get the narrative together, because we wanted to make sure that we positioned it in a way that was sensitive to the fact that she's 6 years old, but also truthful. What I never wanted her to feel was that I lied to her.
Yeah.
Because that would ruin the bond between us, and now it's us. You get what I'm saying? And so some people may disagree with how honest I am with my daughter, but I feel that there's a respect that she will have for me and for him, because we gauged appropriately how much she could manage. And it's forced her to grow up. Mm-hmm. But as a little brown girl in this America, you have to grow up. You remember, statistically, my child should be hypersexual. She is more inclined to be suspended from school. She's less inclined to really be academically engaged, right? You know, if you look at the statistics, my daughter is supposed to be completely... I mean, it's just, it's incredible. Again, the intellectual, I understand.
Yeah.
She's supposed to be
Troubled.
Yeah.
troubled, at risk, not able to function in structured environments. And yet she's everything but that. So to your point about the community, I never embrace single motherhood. There's no way I could claim single motherhood when I have a tribe that that I have around me. And that's professional and personal. They all really start coming together. So when you understand that the world has determined her trajectory based on her father's mistake, you actively work every single day to counter that. So it's affirming him. It's, taking the shame out of the situation for her. It's helping her to understand, cause and effect. And it's also helping her to understand the inequity of the prison system.
Right.
Period. So it's helping her to think about sentencing. How long is too long? Does the punishment fit the crime? And we're having really deep philosophical conversations right now. And I'm really happy that we're able now, emotionally, intellectually, to have these kinds of moments. Because as a 6-year-old, it's like, but he's not here, but he's not here. And that's what I'm dealing with, the immediacy of his absence. Now at 11, you know, it's like, but he's not here for a reason. And when I go to visit him, everyone in there looks like him, Mom. Why? Different kind of conversation.
That's a great question. I mean, that's a great point because, you know, you point out the iniquities, and we were talking about the impact on the child. But do you think the punishment that he received was appropriate? Is that a tough question to ask?
Answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather
And
not
what
answer.
about your dad?
When my father was arrested, he was on the front page of the newspaper, the Newsday,
Yeah.
one of the biggest New York newspapers, the whole page.
Wow.
I was brought up at a very young age, and y'all just said something about it. Like, we were understood, my sister and myself understood these are the cards that were dealt. Everything that happens in your life, whether it's good or bad, is your fault. Not meaning fault, meaning bad, but I'm just saying, whatever happens in your life, whether it's good or bad, you brought that on yourself. It's for you.
It's ownership of
Yeah,
your
you have to,
circumstances.
yes, and that's what you were talking about.
So, if you don't mind,
That's
these are
fine,
questions
fine.
from our producers.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, do you mind telling us what he was incarcerated for?
The 16-year bid, first-degree armed robbery,
Got it. All right.
and somebody was shot.
Go ahead, Peter.
I want us
Yeah.
to go back to something you said because we were talking about this earlier. Kids have like these unreal minds that we don't give them credit for. That they're much smarter than we all think.
So
Yes.
resilient.
And they
so
make
resilient.
they have these they see things that are so basic but are so strong that when your daughter walked in there and was like, everyone looks like my dad. Like, that's powerful, and we don't talk
Yes.
enough about that. She's making a point. It's like, you know, there's all these different people in the world, but when I come to prison, they all look like my dad. Like, that's powerful in itself, and we don't address those type of things.
Agreed.
You know,
100%.
She's engaging in social justice work in her
We need all the
kinda
11-year-olds,
limited
all- yeah.
capacity.
Oh, how
right?
so?
She's I mean, that's the work.
Oh, gotcha.
It's the interrogation.
Raising the issue, yeah.
It's interrogating.
It's the questioning.
It's why is this the way it is? I mean, you know, when you're searched as a 7-8-year-old girl, and I ask her, well, what was that experience like? What do you think they were looking for? She said, Mom, you know what they were looking for. Zoe, what are they looking for? They're looking to see if I brought your famous chicken wings that Dad loves so much, because you know if I bring those wings in here, it's going to be a fight because I can't bring enough wings for the whole prison. I promise you I can't make it up.
I love
My
that. I
daughter
love
was
that.
literally, that's what they were looking
Wow.
for, making sure I'm not bringing your famous chicken wings in.
Wow.
The chicken wings, symbolic representation of the things her father loved.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful.
So I can see that intellectually, but emotionally, I was like, no, baby, you can't bring any wings.
Yeah.
But the fact that in her mind, it was the coping strategy, to me was amazing.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Because this is something I noticed, and I want to know if you noticed it, when it comes to the normalization of prisons and people who go to prison in certain neighborhoods and certain incomes versus others. When I go to visit my clients and I see a white-collar person, a well-to-do white person, and it's visiting time, there's like 9, 10, 15, 20 people visiting them. The whole family's there. They're all there. Sometimes when you see people from low-income areas or African-American or other brown people, there's 1, 2 people maybe there. And I think, let me know if you think it's because they're so normalized or they're so used to people going to prison and being treated differently that it's no longer like, I need to go see them, like, you know, or it's not as new to them. Like a lot of these families on the white collar, you can tell when a new white person has just been arrested and it's in the first 2 years because like it's like Sunday picnic when it's visiting time,
Wow.
everyone's there. And is that something that you also notice when you go to visit?
You know, I think we forget to talk about economics and how expensive
Yes.
it
Oh,
is to
that's-
visit,
yes.
That's
and how
another issue.
expensive it is
Yes.
to just
Preach on that,
communicate.
please.
Well,
Yes.
So
especially in federal because
sometimes-
they're moving you.
Sometimes low-wealth families aren't there because it costs
They
so
can't
much.
Yes.
make
It's
it.
a great point.
So I don't ever discount how important it is to talk about the criminalization of poverty when we talk about social justice.
Oh, that's a whole. I don't even want
Glad
to
I
go
asked that
down that
question, yeah.
rabbit
I
hole.
no,
just
that's
want-
actually good
because
because
That's
like
a
there's
huge
period
issue.
where
Go ahead, DJ
I
Lyve.
remember one time my father, he was about 10 hours away. He was by Canada in New York. He was about 10. It was about 10-hour drive. And I was like, I'm not going to see him. You want me to sit in the car for 10 hours, then we got to get a hotel and then still drive back the next day 10 hours and hope that we make it and hope that we don't get messed with by the COs when we get there, because they will mess with us.
Yeah.
Just what it is. You feel what I'm saying? I know people that went to go visit somebody and got locked up visiting somebody, you know, for whatever reasons, you know. So then it's like, do I really want to do this? This is like a 2-day mission just to do this.
Yeah.
As a kid, I'm not even gonna lie to you. There was a certain point where I was like, I'm not going to see my dad no more. I was like, I'm tired of this. I've been to every
So it's
prison.
expensive and it's taxing, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a
You'd be like, this
certain
is just-
kind of toll.
I
it
always
takes
gotta
on
go.
you
I
to
always
do
gotta
it.
go.
And then you have to talk about what's going on in people's in immediate circumstances, right? And a lot of people are living check to check.
Yeah.
A lot of people are dealing with situations that they have to be present for, and obviously traveling across the country or 10 hours away is a big deal for certain people, and it takes a lot of planning and a lot of resources to be able to do that.
A lot
So
of coordination.
Not to mention when you're a kid
Disposable income.
at
Yeah.
that time, probably a little resentment. Like, this is my weekend. Like, you want me to go visit
Yeah.
my dad and spend all this time? I don't get to see my friends. Like, no, this is my weekend.
yeah, and
Now there's resentment there.
There is like, come on, man. It's like, but I did have enough respect because I'm like, well, you know what? This is my father. And I was taught, like, look, he didn't, it's like, not like he purposely isn't in your life. So I was taught that at a young age. He messed up. We all messed up. Nobody's perfect. Now we got to deal with the circumstances. And that's really what it is. Like, you just got to deal with the circumstances. Like, nobody's mad at my dad and my family. Hey, you messed up. You got to deal with it. Just correct it.
So, Peter, slight pivot here. This is a very subjective question, but I'm just going to throw it out there to you. Do you think prosecutors care about the institutional effects of their wins, or when they lock these people up? Do you think that they actually factor that part into the equation?
No. And I don't want to say it. I'm going to almost give a benefit of the doubt. I don't want to say it because they're bad people. I think it's easier for them to go home and shut it down and not think about, when one of my specialties that I do on my cases is called mitigation, and I take that very serious. And the point of mitigation is, how do I turn a defendant or a number into Tom Smith or Jerry Lewis?
Yeah.
Because once you do that, now the prosecutor is starting to learn about this person. And like we talked about off the air, we're in a very black and white society. And I don't mean that race. I mean character-wise, 280 characters on Twitter. There's always gray.
Yeah.
There's always reason. Look, people don't just commit crimes because, they want to commit a crime. There's all these reasons. And that's a whole nother show that we could go down. But it's easier to live with yourself. It's easier to do your job. It's easier to effectuate justice in their mind if I'm just dealing with a bad guy versus a person. And so I don't think they look at it as like, oh my God, I sent this person to the hole for 20 years. Like it's as a human being, that's probably difficult for them to do. Not to mention they've been trained a certain way that they're cleaning the streets, so they automatically come into it. If you've been arrested, I'm taking the word of my officer, you're a bad person. Prove it otherwise. And sometimes we can't. Sometimes straight up we just can't.
Definitely. So I want to go back to the academics of this issue. So I'm going to direct this to Professor Lynn. I want to focus on mental health a little bit. DJ Lyve alluded to the fact that his father was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Can you talk a little bit more about or elaborate on the mental health impact of being in prison? How does that affect one's mental health, and does it actually cause mental health issues, or do you think that a lot of people come in there with pre-existing mental health and it gets exacerbated by being there?
I hold the position that to be black and brown in America is to have a mental health issue.
Wow.
Elaborate.
That goes by word of prayer.
It's the trauma. Yeah. It's the trauma that we endure just to live and be productive in a society designed for our demise. Period, point blank. I'm holding trauma. I'm walking with it. I'm thinking about my dad who wasn't incarcerated but chose not to be there. Because for whatever reason, in his mind, he felt incapable.
Especially
That's trauma.
a society that tells you if you work hard and you do what you're supposed to do, we're in America.
Oh, yeah.
Good
Protestant
things will happen.
Work ethic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't always like, I work, bust my way every day. It's like nothing's changing.
Right. So to your point, it's living out and managing the trauma as best we can. You're holding trauma. And I would say the work that you do is traumatic to you. Not even knowing anything about your personal family setup, your history, but the work that you invest in every day, there's trauma there. So when you talk about being in prison, all of that is exacerbated.
Yeah.
So I have conversations where I see the depression show itself in maybe more ways on this day than that day, but I always acknowledge there's an underlying current of mental instability. So I'm dealing with someone who is emotionally fragile and won't get the help that he needs without being over-medicated, without, he's not going to get the kind of therapy in the healthy relationships and bonds. I mean, this is therapeutic.
Yeah.
And so I thank you again for putting it together, because there's a certain kind of healing power in this space.
We're glad to have you here.
But when you look at prisons, where's that healing space?
Yeah.
So now let me say
You
something.
can't have it. You're vulnerable. You're emotional.
See, in
Go
prison,
ahead,
You
DJ
have a target
Lyve.
on your
Yeah.
back.
my father, on this topic, they always put them in all types. You have to go to group. You have to do this, that, right? When you've been institutionalized, you've been in prison long enough, you're a con. So, which means you're a great actor. Okay, I gotta go do this. I'm gonna act this out just for this time, get it through with it, boom. But that's not really me. So they put them in these program stuff, right? But now somebody that in their mind is smarter than, they look at like, I'm gonna go in this program with these people who are nothing like me. Like, I don't have their problems. And even my father, because my father would tell me, he's like, they're putting me in this drug program when he was in prison. He's like, I don't even do drugs, but they want me to do it. So he's looking down on the people in there. It's like, them people ain't like, what am I going to this program for? Like, they're not even like, they're crackheads. They're this, that. But all right, if I got to go in this program, I'm going to shut up, sit here, because this is going to lessen my time, do something. I'm going to act.
They'll just do it. Yeah.
But nothing changes.
You said the word con. I like the word act better, because that's a survival tactic.
Yes.
Like what he's doing there, when you go to prison and you learn how to act and you learn how to get by and you learn how to make money, how to make
so
money.
you shouldn't say con.
But I know what you meant by it. But it's 100% survival tactic. How do you turn that survival tactic off after 20 years when they let you go if you haven't been rehabilitated to do so?
Yeah.
The thing is to be able to stop
point.
that, though, because when my father's come home from prison, right? He's so fragile. My father's so fragile.
On edge.
My father's 63, 64 years old. When I tell you he's so fragile, you would think he's an 18-year-old, 17-year-old. That's where his mind is right now. Like, even with the way he thinks. Well, mom said this, mom said that. Talking about my grandmother.
Wow.
Sounding like he's 15.
Because when you go to prison, you shut all that off.
Off.
So when you turn it back
So
on,
now it's
you're
like,
already left.
how can you change something like that? Honestly, we all talk about it in my family. My sister, my girl, we've tried so many different things, even just being comforting. That's actually the wrong thing to do.
So you mentioned, and we talked about this
Because
before
when you're
the show.
comforting, they're used to having everything done for them.
Yep.
So you
Yeah.
can't be too comforting for them because that's what they're used to.
Because you got to help them grow.
So
Yes.
so DJ Lyve, you mentioned something before we started the show, actually on a separate occasion, about the stress of your father being out on your family. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
It's sad to say this, but we're more comfortable with my father being incarcerated than with him being home.
Wow.
He's been incarcerated since 2003, I think 10 or 12 times.
But why was it so stressful for your family, him being out? So you mentioned
Because,
his
my father-
mental
Think
fragility.
about somebody, you put somebody into a world like, take us right now, say Mars is built up, and you throw us into Mars. We don't know nothing. We don't know the language. Like, we might be able to speak with like the language
Yeah.
of what's going on nowadays. We don't know nothing. We don't even know where to go. We know nothing.
Yeah.
So what do you resort to? It's like when somebody like, oh man, I don't have a way to eat. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to work. So what am I gonna do? Do what I did in the prison system. Steal. Rob. Kill if you have to. These are just things not because maybe they want to. These things survival. So they kick into a survival mode. That's why when people like they become animals, they really do become animals.
You have to.
Yeah.
And now you're home here. You're in survival mode. So you're doing whatever it is because you don't understand the world that you're in right now.
Yeah.
And now you're worried about that person nonstop.
Non-stop worried about it, like non-stop worried. Like even like my father, like, oh gosh, he didn't go to parole today. Why didn't he go to parole today?
So
they're about to come get him now. He's about to be locked up for 2 more years.
So
18 months.
I'm gonna tell you from dealing with my clients and then the kids that I coach whose fathers aren't around, that's a totally normal feeling.
Yeah.
Like that's like 100% normal. And it goes back to you're used to it. 20 years of living on the inside, it molds you to be who you are and how to live in prison. You spent the last 20 years living without your dad, not having to worry about that. Now you're being thrown a wrench. And I bet you there's guilt that comes with that.
Imagine when you have people say, I just saw your father. Oh, your father this.
Yeah.
Somebody sends you a text message of a clip of your father on the news. Going back to prison. That's what just happened recently. Oh,
Wow.
yo, check this out. This is your father on the daily 6 a.m. news. It's like, what is he doing now? Like, my father was like, he was more like, it's different. My father wasn't a drug user when he went to prison. He wasn't really, my father was like more like what you would consider like a gangster. That's what they considered him. My father got locked. The charge was for first-degree armed robbery,
Yeah.
but he had racketeering under him. He had extortion under him. He had a bunch of other things under him, murder, a bunch of other things. But that's what stuck, what they were able to get him on officially. You feel what I'm saying?
Well, it's powerful. So back to Professor Lynn. I want you to talk a little bit more about masculinity, hypermasculinity, and its impact on interpersonal relationships, and especially how prison factors into that.
Black men just don't have a language to emote. There isn't a language to express insecurity. There isn't a language to express fear. There isn't a language to express doubt. There isn't a language to express grief. There isn't a language to express pain. And so this expectation that they're going to be these highly communicative men, that takes intentional work to build. You are building a language for a person to be able to access and use, right, to share ideas and thoughts in a world that is invested in keeping him mute. Mm-hmm. So the work that we are doing around Black masculinity, and I applaud Morehouse and so many other institutions for recognizing toxic masculinity beyond class. Because typically we want to think that if you can't communicate, right, that directly correlates with your economic, status, so to speak,
exactly.
right? And I'm not saying
or
there's
education
some,
level.
Well, and I'm not saying there isn't some validity there, but what I am saying is we're recognizing, I think in a different way, how the ability to not communicate cuts across. Like, I have 4th generation college students who still struggle with the posturing of how to appear, right? To be hard. I have 4th generation college students engaged in criminal activity when their parents, stroke one check and pay tuition. So there is something that has been glorified about Black masculinity, right? That is defined in these other terms, right? Criminal behavior, hyperaggression, hypersexuality, right? Those things cut across social class.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about your point, the acting, right? If you think about the stage that you find yourself on every day, we were talking about examples of positive, right, role models. If you glorify the men who are assaulting women, not only physically, but, verbally, okay? If society shows you that you could get ahead by stepping on other people, by, hurting your community, by, if that is what we call success, then we have to deal with the facade, right? And I use posturing. It's the posturing. It's wanting to fit in. It's social acceptance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what really kind of the deeper issue here is, why is it that success is defined in those kinds of terms. You get what I'm saying? For
Yeah.
black men, like
For
what is
that
going
particular
on?
demographic.
I kind of
Because your dad can be a doctor. Why are you selling drugs?
Okay.
Your dad, you see, bigger than
Yeah.
what we were
Yeah.
like.
We talked about that earlier. Yeah.
It is so layered.
Yeah.
This
Right,
whole
and it's
thing.
confusing. Like, well, like you said, your dad's a doctor. What do you even? This doesn't even
Social
make sense.
acceptance. Yeah.
You're right. Now there is one way. The only way that I'm gonna say is people that have been incarcerated do communicate is through music. That is
Art's
what
so important.
music is probably one of the most followed things. Period in this world. Music is more followed than religion, hands down. So now when you think about it, with our world, with the urban community, with hip hop.
Well, hip hop's pop now. We were just talking
Hip hop
about
is pop.
that.
Yeah.
Hip hop is pop. Popular music.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people that have been, like you said, through the thing, they're rapping on what they seen. They're letting their emotion out through what they seen. Now, it's almost like we used to say like certain like white girls when we were young. They never been to the hood. They get turned on from seeing the hood shit. Like, oh, it's exciting. That's what's
It's
happening.
the glamorization of hood life.
It's just exciting.
Until you have to really,
oh yeah,
yeah,
Because
like-
people always love the bad guy. Why think they used to like Al Capone? Why
So-
think they like?
You were Pablo Escobar shirt.
Well-
Still to this
yeah,
day.
but it's the convenience of that too.
Well,
You know what I mean?
This is a great segue because we're going to wrap things up pretty soon here. And I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but with you mentioned music, hip hop culture in particular. Do you think the music is influencing folks, or the music is just a manifestation of what's going on in our communities, or
As
a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. If you were to take this if you took this to like 1993, 92, they'd be like, no, the music is not influencing people because half of the rappers, they would tell you like, I'm just making, this is like a story, I'm making it up. They would say it. You see all the interviews back in the day, like, I'm just making, this is what my friends do. I'm rapping about what they do, not what I do. I don't do this, and they'll say that. I'm like, oh, I'm not about this. I go to school.
Yeah.
I went to St. John's University, like it's Run
Yeah.
DMC, like you dig what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
like you know. So it wasn't about. So back then I would say no. Now 100% because now you actually have people that really live that life.
Yeah.
That's your artist that you're looking up to. Back then you didn't. Back then you had more artists.
Yeah.
They were really actually just artists. They weren't really selling drugs
They
like
weren't
Al Capone,
really-
like the big drug dealers here back in the day.
Quote,
They
unquote,
were
gangsters, yeah.
rapping.
Yeah.
The people that were rapping and singing and stuff, they were really just rapping and singing like artists.
So let's wrap
Now,
it up on that
you got
note.
real people.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up on that note. Go
I
ahead.
just want to do one.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just one thing real quick.
Yeah.
So this is something that I learned today by listening to you. So you talked about like what your daughter's going through, right? That reminded me of my sister, but not of me.
Interesting.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So I just learned something. I'm like, But you know how it always goes. Daddy's a little girl.
Yep.
Mommy's a little boy. So now it's making me realize something like, because my sister just finally was able to be like man enough and be like, I'm not taking this no more. And because my sister used to always be emotionally down and why I'm a daddy and whoop, 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 whoop. Just like what you're saying.
Oh man, yeah, you're opening up another can.
I
of
was
worms.
never like that.
And like the emotions and
yeah.
black
That's
males
another podcast,
versus
right?
women.
Yeah.
I was never like that. I just learned something today. But
Yeah.
you're saying it, and I just wanted to talk about it
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that
yeah.
is
Wow.
sticking out to me.
Wow.
Like when I leave here today, I'm
Wow.
gonna call my sister. I'm like, hey. But it's only now to this day, like now that I'm older, I can understand it, and I can understand where maybe like the daddy's a little girl thing comes in.
Yeah.
But for me, I wasn't affected like that.
Well, I'm raising a warrior. That's it.
Sounds
like
like
that.
I'm
I
raising
love
a
it.
warrior.
And like what you
sounds
said,
like-
like you see
yeah.
all the things. My sister was an academic All-American. My sister was All-American in 2 sports in high school. She was a collegiate All-American. My sister makes $400,000 a year now. Was never affected by it. She might have been sad, but my mother made sure she did what she had to do. And I'm gonna tell you this right now.
Back to the
Because
mothers,
of what
huh?
yes, no,
Yes,
it's
gotta
right.
be
Because
strong.
of what my father has done in his life was an example for what my sister and myself said. We don't want to be like that.
Right, what not to do.
But you know, and I know you have to close. Check in on your sister because just because she can check all the boxes and that resume looks strong and that money's coming in and she's successful by society's terms.
No, now she's successful by her terms.
Check on your.
She was
check
just
on your
able to
strong
get
people.
over my father.
Yeah, check on
That
your
is so
strong
true.
people.
Especially
because-
with
reason
the
why-
rash of
and I'm gonna say
suicide.
the reason why she was
Everyone
able-
needs someone. Yep.
Always. The reason why she's able now to get over this hump of my father was because my father coming home and messing up so much stuff. And it's sad because my father has disrupted a lot of stuff to the point where, you know, when you keep helping, and then somebody just keeps it, like, okay, now I gotta shut it down now. And that's pretty. And my sister, because my mom always used to tell my sister that, do not be a sucker, because my sister was very soft, very much like soft. I wasn't built like, okay. My sister was like, crying and stuff like that. I was raised to not cry. I'll get hit if I cried.
But that's
by
that
my
toxic
mother.
masculinity again.
That was by my mother.
Yeah.
And the guys like, what are you crying for? We don't cry.
Wow.
You dig what I'm saying? Like, this is what this is the life that we're in. We dealt with it. Who cares?
Yep.
Let's move forward. You know. So, but with my sister, she just shut down because of all. I guess now she's starting to realize, like, Pop, you're killing me now. Like,
She's
you're
exhausted.
disrespecting me. She's exhausted, and now you're disrespecting me.
She's
perspective.
exhausted.
So one of the things that we do at the show at towards the end is we ask our guests what their musical preferences are, and so we frame it different ways based on based on our mood. But I'll frame it this way, and I'll start with the professor, and I'm gonna work our way to DJ Lyve because I'm very interested in what you have to say. But basically, what music right now is resonating with you? Like what musician or song or genre is really resonating with you, and why?
Oh, I'm listening to LMA hard. I so love what the sisters are doing in terms of really promoting self-care. To point about your sister, check on your strong friend, right? I appreciate that work. There's a lot of healing power in that work, and really just acknowledging sometimes the complexities that come with being a woman. We take for granted that we just put on the cape and kind of go.
Yeah.
And so as a woman who is invested in a lot of different projects, building my brand, raising the warrior, being a lifeline to my co-parent, as a woman who is stretched in all capacities, that artist helps me to take a break and remind myself that rest is necessary. And rest and sleep are different things, and that's another
self-care.
talk, doctor, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking for self-care art. I'm all about that right now, and so yeah, she's dope. She's a dope artist.
Agreed. Nah, she's a vibe. Go ahead.
My answer is nowhere near as cool as that one. But
Go ahead, Peter. Yeah.
Yeah, it really all just changes. I mean, right now I've kind of gone back to like listening to what I was listening to in high school and college, and I got the Carter 2 in my car right now. I just finished the Blueprint the other day, so I'm kind of getting back to what I was doing in the early 2000s, which I wouldn't be upset if it made a little comeback. So
Nice.
That's
All right, DJ Lyve, what
me,
you got for us?
I'm a mood listener. There's
Yeah.
nothing that I could tell you like, oh, this is what I'm listening, this is what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I'm all about mood. If I'm having a bad day, I'll listen to a song that makes me happy.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But I listen to so much music, I try
Yeah.
to not listen to music.
Gotcha. I got it.
Like
got
on
it.
my ride over here, the
Yeah.
radio wasn't even on. Like,
Gotcha.
it's all day long. It's
Like music is your life. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
my life. So it's like sometimes for me, I gotta take a little break from it.
So let me ask you a question, just because you're DJ Lyve, right? Do you have a form of comfort music? Is there certain music that you can
Yeah.
play that makes you? That
I can. Okay,
takes
so
takes
like,
the edge off.
Like I said, it's about mood, right?
Yeah.
Now this might be weird, but I'll listen to Madonna, Holiday. Holiday.
Yeah.
That was one of my mother's favorite songs. My mother died 5 years ago.
Gotcha.
So I changed it around because I used to be crushed when my mom died. For almost 6 years, crushed.
Wow.
So now what I do is I've learned to take that emotion and turn it around and think happy. So when I listen to Holiday, rather than getting sad, I think about the time seeing my mother.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's now it's happy. It's like, yeah, mom, I
Yeah.
talk to her.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
mom. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How, like, to that. Like, you know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying? So that's really where I sit when it comes to music and the influence that it would have on me. And if I was to listen to music, I listen to it nowadays to get that feeling. Like, even Love and Happiness, Al Green.
Yeah.
I'll listen to that. And I'll just think about when I'm young, and it just makes me happy.
Gotcha.
I just want to be happy. You dig what I'm saying?
Listen, that was a great answer. So what I didn't mention before I wrap up is that my brother is also incarcerated, and he has a daughter, my niece, who I'm very much involved with. And a lot of what we talked about is very, very much so salient to me. And I'm a physician, I'm a cardiologist, I'm quote unquote successful, but his getting locked up has affected me. and it has affected her. And it's a struggle that I deal with co-parenting actually, and helping raise her with her mother. And luckily we do have a village to help raise her, and she's a thriving, spunky, very confident young woman that knows her self-worth and is quick to tell you that. And so not everybody's as fortunate to have that, and I definitely count my blessings, and I appreciate all of you guys sharing your personal stories and talking about it from a professional standpoint as well. So with that said, we're wrapping up.
Can I say one thing?
Go ahead.
One thing?
Yeah.
Something that I want to do?
Yeah.
2 things real quick.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I know I'm bringing this back right now. Well, I'll just stick to the main point. Something that I want to do is, since we're wrapping up and we're talking about this whole entire topic, eventually I would like to try to structure, and I'm with some great people right here, so I could put this thought out here to you guys and whomever's listening.
Yes, put it out there.
I really would like to structure something like you used to have guidance counselors when you were in school, a place that people that were incarcerated can go to. I'm trying to say, I've been trying to do this for like 10 years. I just don't know how to do it, to be honest with you. It's just my thought. It's in thought process still, idea.
Well, listeners, are you listening? Go ahead.
This is what I'm saying. So a place where, like, not a community center, but where people can go that are really like, that's been locked up for a while, where there's so many opportunities for them that they actually don't know, even programs for them. So it's like when they come home, they think they have nothing. So they have somebody that can go talk to, a psychologist, a friend, like just somebody, a regular person that they could talk to, relate with. Then also somebody that can sit there and say, well, look, you can get health insurance. There's a program for you because you've been incarcerated for 4 years or more. You can get this. You can get that.
An incarcerated job fair.
Yeah.
Access.
So people can go and they're feeling down, like, because it always happens when that person is depressed. Right, that's when they do something. Oh, I got nowhere to go. I don't know what to do. I'm on the street now. Freaking, I'm about to go rob this person
The excitement of getting out wears off and life hits you in the
now.
face.
So that before they go, I'm gonna go rob this person. Let me go into the community help, whatever we call the program. Let me just go into that today. I'm just gonna go in there.
Well, I'm gonna wrap it on that note. That's a dope idea, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this podcast and watching this on YouTube would definitely agree with you. And I appreciate you sharing that. And if you have any comments or questions, you could check us out at felonymiami.com. For the Felony Miami team, this is Dr. Ashby. It's been a pleasure hosting the show today. Signing out.
Baby, when I ride, baby, you have a